that we have to make sure they're going toward policies where they are actually tough on crime instead of soft on crime. So we appreciate the opportunity to hear from the witnesses today, and we look forward to going back to Washington to work for the people of Charlotte and the rest of the country.
Congressman from the great state of California, Kevin Kiley.
I do come from California, the state where there is the highest level of concern about violent crime. We have far too many tragedies like those that we heard about today. But recently, our voters in California voted to restore consequences for criminal activity. And I think that's an indication of where the country is headed. Regardless of what you may think about the president's use of the National Guard in Washington, D.C., what is inarguable, what the mayor has agreed with, is that it has made Washington, D.C. safer. So that is proof of concept, that when there are consequences for crime, when you strengthen the connection between crime and punishment in the eyes of potential offenders, then you get less crime. Nowhere in America should we have to accept pervasive criminal activity as a fact of life. We don't have to. We just have to restore some common sense when it comes to public safety policies.
The Congresswoman from Florida, Laura Lee.
Today's hearing brought into focus the experience of these families and what so many other families across America have had to go through. When recidivists are let out, when violent criminals are allowed back on our streets, innocent families are the ones who suffers. These stories make clear that we need to allow law enforcement to do their jobs. We need prosecutors who will uphold the oaths they take to enforce the law and protect their community. And we need judges who take into consideration the most important factor of all when considering a bail determination, and that is the risk and the safety to our communities. As a former judge myself, I understand that at any hearing, that should be the guiding principle when a judge determines whether an offender should be allowed back out on the streets. As members of Congress, our obligation is to support the men and women of law enforcement, to stand with victims and their families, to restore the rule of law and public confidence in our justice system. Charlotte's story is tragic. The things that we heard today, the lives that can never be put back the same way. But it is a warning, these families and their stories, about what will happen in any jurisdiction that pursues soft on crime policies that aren't based in data and that don't make sense. We need, as Congress, to work together to ensure that we are working with state and local jurisdictions, that we're supporting policies that work, and that we're ensuring every family in America can feel safe in their community.
Thank you. Congressman from the great state of Kansas, Derek Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for convening this meeting. And I'm grateful to our North Carolina friends for hosting us here today. Some of us are old enough to remember that we have seen this before. If you remember the late 60s, the 70s, and the early 80s in New York City and other great American cities, people even talked about large American cities becoming ungovernable. But what it took was the right mindset, with New York as the flagship, and the right leadership of tough-nosed prosecutors, the right political leadership that prioritized support for the police and public safety over softer social issues, who realize that when you stand up and speak in support of victims, you are doing your job, because those who offend have plenty who by structure speak in support of them. And New York turned around. We're back at one of those moments. It takes all of us standing up and speaking in support of those we heard today who have paid the ultimate price in their loved ones to say, as some have said here before, we have a problem, and it's not just here in Charlotte, and we can fix it. And that's why we're here. I want to thank you for convening this discussion.
Congressman from North Carolina, David Rouser.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Today's testimony was very riveting. I don't serve on the House Judiciary Committee, but appreciate the chairman allowing us to join today. Bottom line is this, good policies lead to good outcomes. Bad policies lead to bad outcomes, regardless of dollar figures. And one of my focuses moving forward, particularly as chairman of the Highway and Transit Subcommittee on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, we're working on a highway bill. Transit is going to be a part of that package. And if you take a look at the murder, senseless, awful, horrific murder of Irina on Charlotte's Light Rail, the perpetrator did not pay any fare. Fares are not enforced. And that is a widespread problem, not just here in Charlotte, but all across the nation. And so we're going to be looking very intently at ways to incentivize enforcement of fare requirements so that we don't have another tragedy like this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Congressman from North Carolina, Chuck Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To all of you, thank you for coming to North Carolina to convene this hearing. I'm Chuck Edwards. I have the distinct privilege to represent North Carolina's 11th Congressional District. And it's so unfortunate that we're here today. But I believe that we can look at this horrendous act and what happened to Irina Zarutska as a rallying point that America has had enough. We heard testimony and conversation from much of the panel, from a number of folks from the other side of the panel today that tried to distract the real issue. They tried to say, give me more money and I'll fix the problem. Take guns off of the streets from law-abiding citizens and there won't be a problem. Look how bad crime is not today compared to what it once was. They spent a lot of time trying to distract from the real issues, and that is leaders are just not being held accountable. Soft on crime policies are creating this issue that we see in America today. Those folks are not here. They're not here right now to look you in the face, to look you in the eye and tell you what they told the rest of this panel earlier. I applaud the chairman of the Judiciary Committee for being here and helping us use this unfortunate instance as a rallying point to say that we've had, as Americans, as we the people, we've had enough. Thank you all for being here.
Congressman from North Carolina as well, Pat Harrigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm here for one very simple reason today, and that is because I'm a father to two young little girls. Their names are Reagan and McKinley. They're 6 and 8. And when I watched Irina Zarutska get brutally murdered on a train right here in Charlotte, my wife and I looked at each other and we said that in some not too distant future, that could be our daughters one day. And that's not acceptable. And it's not acceptable that this happens to anyone else's daughter. It's not acceptable that it happened to Irina. The saddest part of all of this is that this poor gal was safer in war-torn Ukraine than she was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that is not something that we can ever allow to have happen again. And it's not because of what our governor has said, Josh Stein. It's not because of what our Attorney General, Jeff Jackson, has said. It's not because of what our former governor, Roy Cooper, has said the problem is, which is we need more law enforcement. DeCarlos Brown Jr. was arrested 14 times in his past. The murderer that killed Logan Federica 39 times, 25 of those felonies. The problem is soft on crime policies. And we're here to say that enough is enough. We are done watching innocent victims taken from us far too early, and House Republicans are not going to stop until we have a safe country again. Thank you.
I'm sorry, all we are going quickly. It's because we have some folks that have a plane to catch. The Congressman Tim Moore from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, I represent a significant part of Mecklenburg County. Irina Zarutska, she and her family actually live in my district. The police officer who was here today lives in my district. And this is, while I'm proud that I have colleagues here today, I'm not proud of the circumstances by which, frankly, that folks had to be here. And we've seen, this is not new to Mecklenburg County. In my old job as Speaker of our State House, we saw 2 counties where you had these patterns where dangerous criminals were being given bonds that were set really low and being turned loose who, frankly, should have been kept incarcerated. And it's not a need there to change the law. It's a matter you have judges and magistrates, liberal judges and magistrates, who are not following what the law prescribes. I'm proud that we're looking at even cracking down more on this cashless bail. I'm proud of our North Carolina legislature, who came into session very quickly and passed legislation that's on Governor Stein's desk right now that will close some of these loopholes, that will try to deal with this. And I hope he signs it. And if he doesn't, I feel certain the General Assembly will override that veto. But this is a problem around the country. We've seen this before in other states and other cities, and we're better than that. We can do better than that. We must, and we should not be. We can't turn a blind eye to this. And to the point about it being resources, it's Mr. Chairman, this isn't a money issue. It's not a money issue. It's a policy issue. Just look at the counties that I represent immediately or contiguous to Mecklenburg County, who pro rata get roughly the same amount of money when it comes to these things, and you don't have those problems there. The entire GOP delegation from North Carolina co-signed a letter asking that this magistrate judge who released this dangerous criminal be removed from her job. That at a minimum should happen, but we're also looking at legislation, frankly, to hold judicial officials civilly liable for grossly negligent acts when it comes to releasing these criminals. Maybe if some folks have some skin in the game and personal liability, maybe there'll be better decisions with that. Thank you for being here, sir.
I think we have Congressman McDowell. Is he here? No, okay. And Congressman Norman, is he here? Okay, so I think that wraps it up. For those that have to leave, you can leave now. We can take 1 or 2 really quick questions. Anybody have anything?
Representative Browser, do you have a second? Sorry.
A brief second.
Okay. Can you just talk about, you talked about the incentivized for fair enforcement. Can you just go a little bit more in depth about that? Shell sent an $18 million security deal for the transit system, but yet they didn't have security. They don't check fair enforcement. So can you go into greater detail about that?
Well, fair enforcement is a universal problem. It's a specific problem here in Charlotte. We'll be looking at ways to incentivize fair enforcement. That might be dollars, that might be policy positions. We'll just have to see. But it's high on the radar, and we're going to do something. That's all I can tell you right now. And keep myself out of trouble.
You mentioned your time as Speaker. I was wondering if I could ask you why you didn't pursue cashless bail reform or magistrate reform when you were one of the most powerful politicians in the state.
We actually passed legislation to deal with that. We also, to make it more difficult for courts to put in place cashless bail, we also passed what's called the Victims' Right Amendment to our state constitution that actually gave a lot more rights to victims in this state that has helped a lot. But what we found is that even though we passed that, you still have problems, particularly in the same couple of counties. And I would talk with law enforcement officials throughout this entire state, and they would tell me, the 2 counties I would hear about would be Durham County and Mecklenburg County, over and over again. I can tell you that some of the changes that we made to state law about judges, where we started creating special Superior Court judges that could come in and could be appointed by the legislature that tended to be more conservative, trying to send some of those judges into these urban areas where they had more liberal judges, has been something that's there. But it's been a problem. At the state level, again, that's the old job. We were kind of playing whack-a-mole with it all the time. And I'm sure, here's the deal, even with the new law that this legislature has just passed, once it goes into place, if you don't put the right folks in office, if you keep liberal judges in place, liberal magistrates in place, they'll find other ways to work around it. And that's why it's important to raise this for transparency so that the voters ultimately know what the effect is of some of these elected judges.
Yes.
In preparation of this hearing, did you hear from the mayor or any of our local judicial officials? Did anyone reach out to you about violent.
I did speak with some local folks that are not here right in this room, but especially folks that are working on the transit system. And as you know, there's a big referendum coming up on the transit system, and they seem to have a really positive outlook. They want to make it better. They want to make it even safer. They want to expand the business community. Charlotte is a beautiful place. You know, I come from southern New Jersey. We have a lot of tourism. It's really pretty. But Charlotte's a beautiful place as well, and they can do amazing things. Those were the main people I individually interacted with. My understanding is the mayor, although a Democrat, is willing to comply and work along with others to get that done and to work with folks to make the streets safer. It shouldn't be this way.
Congressman Moore, in that county, should folks vote for this transit tax if there is concerns about public safety while riding it?
Well, one of the things that's a part of this will also be more law enforcement with the transit plan. And I do think that the new transit plan, the way it was adopted, we didn't pass it when I was there because until we got the percentage that needed to be there for road funding, I wasn't going to let it move. When they finally agreed to do the 60% for roads, that's when it started moving forward. But they've made it very clear that a key part of this is going to be funding additional law enforcement as well. And then I think the fare enforcement is very important too. So, and also the regional approach, that this is more than just Charlotte, it's this entire region that's involved, is going to be helpful, and I think it's going to make it a model that'll be sustained.
Congressman Moore,
One last question.
Sorry, Congressman Moore, can you talk about your meeting or conversations with Arena's family?
So I spoke, yes, I spoke with her uncle once or twice now, and I just, it's one of those things like when we have the testimony today, you don't even know what to say sometimes. But it is, the story he told me about her, of course, she had fled war-torn Ukraine. She's got, I believe, her mother's here. She has a couple of siblings who are here. They actually live outside of Charlotte, but here in the county. They live in my district. And the tragic story of someone who fled a nation, as Congressman Harrigan said, she was safer in Ukraine than she was here. I mean, it blows your mind. But she was working, I think, 2 or 3 jobs, and I think she had just saved up enough money to be able to afford a car. And then this happens. It's just so senseless. But at the end of the day, this guy who killed her should have been in prison. We talk about the fact that he was released on bond on this particular charge, right? Couple of problems. One, when he presented as he was on the charge he was released, there was enough, as I understand, where he could have been involuntarily committed, in which case he would have been in a facility where he'd have been locked and he couldn't have gotten out. But let's go back even further. Why was a guy who was clearly dangerous and a convicted felon, why was this guy on the street where he was out there roaming around? And here's the other question. How many more of these folks are on the street right now, today, that should be incarcerated? And that's the other question, and that's why this committee is taking this so seriously.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you all for being here, and have a good day.